Megan, this has made my day. Thank you for coming on the show.
I am so delighted to have a conversation with you, and it's extra exciting that we're hitting record.
Yeah, we have conversations, but I've known you for years. We met at a mastermind in Puerto Rico. We were sitting right next to each other during one of the sessions. And I obviously am not a direct health practitioner, but I know you and many others in my life are. And I just love how you show up. I love how you coach. I love how you own your opinions and your point of view. I love how outspoken you are, parentheses, especially for a Canadian.
Oh, fair.
Yeah, because you guys are a little bit less aggressive than us New York type people. What was that like when you first stepped out and just started vocal? Were you always like that, or was that something that you had to step into?
Mm, Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't know what everyone's like behind closed doors, but I know that I was not necessarily the person who had this big outward opinion all the time. Sitting around our family dining room table, oh, I had an opinion there. And I got super curious. I'm like, why do I have this like deep state of conviction about ideas in this like really safe, secure space? And then there's the outer world and I temper it. And I realize that I'm like most at home when I am not tempering any element of myself. And so what I learned to do was maybe just like I read the room. I learned how to package those opinions in such a way that they could actually be heard. But when I'm given an opportunity to podcast or speak or to talk about something that I really believe in, part of me feels like I get to channel this like higher version of myself. I really feel like speaking and conveying ideas and repackaging ideas so that they can be heard by more people. That's one of the things I really love to do in the world. So I don't know how to be without that.
I love that. I have found that in my experience, a lot of folks who come from very regulated industries or markets have a hard time speaking up and expressing their opinions because there's a lot of compliance or regulatory, like, for example, healthcare, finance, law, education, the military. People from those backgrounds tend to, because you've been trained like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
slap on the wrist, don't wear certain nail polish. I remember you telling me once, like, you were taught that in med school. Do you feel like that background has been an extra hurdle for you, or was that just more a personal thing that you had to come through?
Oh, it's totally a hurdle. It's a hurdle because the regulators are a gatekeeper to your livelihood. And so they do hold an element of power in your life, but I think you can give them as much power as you want. I spent a lot of time in the work that I do now helping clinicians. I spend a lot of time in the weeds of really understanding where are the lines in the sand related to what I can say and what I can't say. And I very early on I'm good at assessing risk, and I was like, "Oh, I know I wanna talk. I know that's part of my brand. I know that this is I don't know how to be and exist as an entrepreneur and not have an opinion and ideas that I share. I'm gonna actually just hedge my income reliability across multiple streams and not just one to give me some options down the road." And I actually reached a point where I retired my license to practice because I had actually at this point grown such a large business on the other side, and I employed so many, in this case, so many women who were important breadwinners in their own family that I was like, "Oh, so the risk has really swung and it's different now. If my license fell into jeopardy over here, which could compromise now all of the businesses, that's a risk I'm not willing to take on behalf of other people." And so it was partly what informed me stepping out of care. But
Mhm.
with that said, I never got a slap on the wrist. I never had a regulator coming to me saying, "Megan, you can't say that." I really had a strong understanding of where that line existed, and in knowing that, felt very confident about the stuff that I was sharing. I wasn't standing on the rooftop in the middle of a pandemic telling everybody, like, what to do or not to do. Like, I knew that was not a good use of my voice. When I talk, what I want to convey for people is like new models and new ways of thinking and being able to view the world. Part of how I package my information also, I think in some ways protects me from those pieces. I don't want to be in the business of telling people what to do. I want to be in the business of sharing with people frameworks on how to think about what's happening in the world from a new lens. And that's also just a safer way to do it.
one of the things I've always been intrigued with your journey and like a lot of people, it's did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? You mentioned the business had grown. Was there like was that something that you knew growing up, or maybe you discovered it when you launched your own practice and then you looked at other models? Or was there a day that you realized, dang, I'm an entrepreneur? There's no going back. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. I grew up in a really entrepreneurial household. My parents were divorced, and I was an only child from that marriage. And I spent time with my mom and my dad. My mom was a school principal, my stepfather was a police officer, and my dad was an entrepreneur. And from a really young age, we talked very openly about money and autonomy and self authorization in the world. And all of these pieces were actually really critical and really important to my upbringing. My allowance was tied to my acquisition of financial acumen. These were things that were really important. So I don't wanna be like, "Oh, no, I didn't have any exposure." I had a lot of exposure around what that piece would look like. So with that said, what I did discover one day with, like, lights is that I am unemployable. So I got fired from, I think, like, my 2nd job I ever held, which was, like, a summer job with 0 real responsibility. And I came home and my dad looked at me and I was at the cottage and he said to me, "You're not sitting on the dock for the summer. I don't know what." And I wasn't like a bad entitled kid, but he was like, "I just wanna be very clear, like, sitting here is not an option." And I was like, "Okay, how do I have the lake and the dock and be working at this is the equation I need to solve for." And I solved for that equation. I started a cottage cleaning business for people living on islands. And I had my little tin boat and he's like, "You can't sit here on the dock." And I was like, "I will find a way to be sitting on the dock and make this my summer job." And so that year I made flyers and I put them in these like plastic sheaths and I went around all the docks and I left them on the docks with a rock on top so they wouldn't blow away and they wouldn't get smudged in the rain. And within 2 weeks, I had a full roster of cleaning clients. I liked to clean. I feel like that had to be in the I feel like that's part of the story you need to know. I wasn't like BSing my way through cleaning people's cottages. And then the next summer, we got all these clients to open their cottages. I had 11 of my friends working for me. And I would drive them to the cottages because they didn't all have boats. I'd drive them to the cottages and I would drop them off to clean. And I came back and sat on the darn dock. And that was the moment where I was like, "Oh, I can never work for anyone else ever again." So when I got into healthcare and interested in healthcare and I met a naturopathic doctor and all of those things, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. Now I can have this. Now I have a way to channel this entrepreneurial energy. I can help people." So it was actually the option to be an entrepreneur. And it was knowing you had to be an entrepreneur to succeed as an ND that really drew me into it. That's usually the deterrent for a lot of people, but that was the thing that actually really magnetized me towards this profession.
Oh, that's incredible. I didn't grow up like that. Like, I didn't have entrepreneurs in my family. Like, we got when my sister and I were growing up, my dad would give us $10 per A we got on the report card. And I understood why he did that. He was an employee. Actually, so this was interesting. The more I've gotten to know him, which sounds funny, as an adult,
It's
you and I
not.
are, yeah,
Yeah,
me
sure.
lenses. He was an entrepreneur. He was a small business owner. He ran a like a taekwondo gym, like a
That's
dojo. Like
cool.
he really did that. But then he got married. I was born relatively early in their marriage, and he just went from job to job. And so I grew up never thinking I would want to run a business. I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant, to be honest. And we were like super religious. So I had a very different upbringing, right? So there's like a lot of unlearning and undoing of things and reframes and stuff like that. But what I've found is that you always like you come across something and it like awakens a part of you, right? And then there's you let the genie's out of the bottle and you can't get it back in. So that's super interesting. Like you knew that from the beginning with the coaching and the business that you guys have now, you and your team have now, versus what you used to do with working with patients. Do you see a lot of overlap on that? In other words, do you ever feel like your coaching clients are like another set of patients?
100%. Yep, I do. I had a little bit of I had a little there's been evolutions of this, and I'll get into that in a second, but just as a caveat, last week, I came home, my husband's, I just need to reflect to you. You've been really grumpy lately. What is going on?" And I said, "You know what? I'll tell you what's going on is I've been working so hard to add leverage to our business so that I am not trading my time for money. But what I'm really frustrated with, and I realize I inadvertently stepped into, is I am now trading my energy for money. And that's leaving me in this deep state of resentment." And I was like, I didn't put that in the equation when I was solving. the next level. I need to go back to the literally have a marker board in front of me. I'm like, I need to go back to my algebra formulation. I need to add this variable in because it's not getting me the outcome that I'm that I am after. I think there's this evolution around all of these pieces. I've lost your original question, Mike, but I wanted to throw that
Mhm.
piece in. Oh yeah, you asked me about treating patients and whether it was the same. I did evolve from trading my time for money. And in fact, I talk about this a lot. If you want to move away from trading your time for money and you want to do it like right now, it's not a new strategy that you need to put in place, it's a decision. And so one of the things I talk to my clinicians a lot about, and it's the same with my patients. I'm like, if you want to be healthier, it's not, you don't have to do a lot of work today. You just have to make a different decision today. But with practitioners or anyone trading their time for money, if you make the decision that you don't wanna do that, then what you need to replace your 30-minute follow-up appointment with is, you need to name that appointment to reflect the strategy that you are, imparting to your clients in that visit. And what I did to move away from trading my time for money is I built a strategy and I built a methodology. And what I did with my patients to move them away from feeling like, "Oh, there's like a laundry list of things I need to do to be healthy," is I helped them build a strategy, and all we were doing was chipping away and deploying the strategy. It's the same thing when we're talking about practitioners. And the last piece I'll say on that is what I've really come to realize is that the energetics of wealth building that I talk about with practitioners and how do we ensure that you have working capital and you have cash coming in and the sense of value and worth that you need to be able to bring money into your world is exactly the same energetic challenges that patients would face when they're like, "Well, I don't know if I'm worthy of this level of health. Why do you want to listen to my?" It is the two run in the exact same frequency, not to get all woo on it. It's the same thing. So what I see is when practitioners have blocks about bringing new money and they also have blocks about bringing in those right type of clients, and they have a hard time coaching their clients towards that sense of worth required to truly build health. So there's just having the opportunity to dance on both sides. I get the parallels are quite uncanny, actually.
I love the differentiation between time for money and energy for money. I That totally resonates with me. I look at my calendar. Some days are full of time, but every appointment I have on my calendar is a high energy appointment. And I think that's one thing that folks who run their own practice or business, whatever skin you have on it, you don't realize that until you meet other people who don't live like that in their work life. Like
Yeah.
I literally don't have a wasted minute when I'm working. Like I don't go Amazon shopping on my lunch break, like when I'm at work. Like when I'm working on everything I'm doing is
I do.
requiring almost the best, right? Yeah, you do. But it's like there's no water cooler talk
Yeah.
because I've run my own thing. But like, I've thought about that, and I would compare it to what my work life looked like when I was working a regular job, corporate CMO company. I was still busy, but I was like, gosh,
Mhm.
how much time did I waste just like side chatting with people and things like that? And you realize that everything you do when you're running a practice, running a business, like it tends to require like a lot more of you than other people, maybe in other situations.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit before we started chatting, you're like taking breaks and stuff like that. And what does that ebb and flow look like for you now, like with the energy and guarding your energy and not just your time?
Yeah, so I we just shut down a big program. Like we have flipped our offerings in our business in the last year. I don't love the analogy if I burned it all down because I didn't. I really strategically was like, "Oh, we have a core program that actually is the bread and butter of our whole business, and it is sucking the life force out of me. And we need to end it." And so we did. We like it's ending at the end of this year, and we were super selective about the last cohort that we put into it, and it had run its course. I was like, I want to end in a Ted Lasso energy where people wish it was still going, not okay. Like the last few seasons weren't great, so we just made the decision to shut it down. So I think that preservation of energy is making me more courageous
Mm.
in certain realms. It's making me more decisive. I've decided that it's just a standard I want to live by. And so once that standard is set, it's once you're gluten free, you don't eat gluten anymore. Once that standard has been set, I was like, I just actually can't hold space for what this energy is becoming. And I wanted to make space for the new evolution. I'm really sure now it's like these 4-year cycles. And every 4 years I need to do these flips. And so we've got some really cool things that are in the works right now that which are an evolution of my work and my mission. I feel like I'm not in a gloaty way, like in an amateur way. I'm like a I'm like an entrepreneurial artist. Like, to me, this is a
Mm.
creative outlet to build things and leverage a skill set that I've had. And listen, some of the artwork, people are like, "We don't like that art." And that's okay. It's like my little artist studio, and I wanna put things into the world, and if you don't like them, that's fine. I'll hang them on my own walls, and we'll figure that out. I don't take that part personally, but, um, yeah, I was really craving an evolution and more leverage in my business, and how do we start to take things to that next higher level. That's one of the ways I really do preserve my energy is I have to find new creative outlets as an entrepreneur.
You've used that word evolution a couple times. I love that word, by the way. I think when I was going through, I don't know, my whole 40s have been an evolution. It's just been a chrysalis, like the whole 40s. A friend of mine, Nick Cavuto, we were talking, and he says to me, like, when I have conversations, like, sometimes just a bomb goes off when I hear
Mhm.
someone say something a certain way. And I think I was, he, and he's younger than me, but he just has this way of seeing through what I'm feeling and all the energy and all that. And he goes, "Hey, man, I don't think you're really in an identity crisis. I think you're just going through an identity evolution." And that stuck. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I wrote that down. I never forgotten it. Because a crisis is like red alert. Like you said, we're burning everything down. We're shutting everything down. We're gonna live on the street. We're a complete failure. It's great. But now, like that word evolution has is empowering. It's I'm growing. I'm transforming. I'm
Yes, so this has come up for me in the last 72 hours in like a it's moved from an energetic idea to like people are putting language to it, but it's this idea even in I'm just gonna call it midlife, not adolescence, not like still just we're not early in our careers anymore. We're like in
right.
it. And the language that we had to describe this phase of our life previously was crisis. It's your midlife crisis. Like you go do something bold in your 40s and you're like, oh gosh, whereas I'm like, "Oh,
Hmm.
like, I'm actually just I'm decisive and I'm living and I know what I want and I'm not hanging out in the realm of indecision anymore and I have the money to go buy it for my" that's not a crisis. That is like that's an evolution. And
Mm.
so this idea of moving from crisis language to describe the actualization of the skill set that we have at this phase of life, I think is really important. And even the word chrysalis came up the other day in this other conversation I had around this is that we've been incubating this next layer of identity and stepping into a place where we are not necessarily having to sell our time or our energy. What we now get to package out is our wisdom and our leadership. And these are tools that enable us to disseminate our teaching with much more leverage, like not necessarily just in a business way, but in a like legacy way. This stuff is really exciting to me. I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. This is cool. Like I have a way better view from here. I'm taking advantage of like the penthouse view, and that's exciting.
I recently read a book by Chip Conley,
I heard him
and
speak 2 days ago.
that's wild.
Great.
I heard him. So the book for all you listening is called "Learning to Love Midlife." Came out a few months ago. I think I read it in 3 days. I highlighted like half the book, and the main premise, he goes, "Yeah, midlife has a branding problem because just like you said, everyone thinks midlife crisis, right? It's more about the chrysalis and the evolution." I heard Chip speak, and I didn't know who he was. I was at a retreat with some of our mutual friends, and he stopped by at lunch and shared a few minutes. I was like, "Who is this guy? Why does he know all this stuff? This is pretty incredible." And what I remember from that 10-minute little luncheon talk was he said, "You're starting out when you're young, like your primary identity is ego. You're driven by what you can accomplish and what you can attain. And then in midlife, it shifts to the soul." And I was like, "Oh, that's exactly how I'm feeling." And he goes, "And then as you get older, it's like what Erickson describes as I am what survives me, where it's like legacy, like you said." And I'll never forget he said this. We get in trouble when we try to live our current stage by the rules of a younger age. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, that wasn't in the book. I wish you put it in the book. But I was
hard
like,
to hear.
yes, yeah. So I get that. Have you heard about, I wonder if you know this story. It's an allegory, whatever. So this wealthy businessman goes on vacation to the docks, to the beach, and he goes over to the beach and there's a boatman and he asks the guy for a ride. He's sure. And he's just a local and he's pull on the boat kind of thing, takes him out into the ocean and shore. And ever the businessman, the guy goes, "Hey, have you ever thought about hiring another person to do this with you? He's no. Why? What would I do then? He's if you hire another person, then you can take more customers. And he's like, but then what would I do? There's you hire more people and yet you have a lot of customers. And then you open another location on the other side of the island. And he's like, then what do I do? He's like, you hire more people to run that thing. And then you open a third location and on. He said, then what do I do? And he goes, the business goes, then you retire and you sit on the beach and ride a boat. So it's just like full circle.
I love it.
Like
Yeah.
it always put that in perspective that don't be busy for the sake of it. But I also know that like you and I are wired, like we have to share, we have to grow, we have to evolve. How else has that played out for you? You said that you're going through all these evolutions and stuff right now. In what other ways has that played out? Because you're clearly leaving the busyness parts or trying to behind,
Well,
right?
the that version of busyness, like the version of like how many coaching clients could I take on and what new mastermind program create, those things I'm like, we got to cap that and I have to get more creative. We're building an event center that'll be opening
Oh,
this summer. And we want to facilitate and create experiences for other group leaders to be able to bring people. I want to take the knowledge that we've learned and create a physical space. I'm like, I'm really craving like work I can see, not work that's digitized. I have my wall behind me where I like to write my projects out. So I like to be in my garden, not like an old lady, but be like back to when I was cleaning stuff where I finished my work for the day. I'm like, oh, look what I did. It's really manifesting in that way. And I'm really trying to lean into this notion of I was laying in bed the other day and I was like, what's bothering me? I was like, oh, normally at the end of the day, I'm conditioned. I have conditioned myself to, be like, "It's been a good day because I was so productive." And I wasn't productive. My inbox was still not where I wanted it to be, and something else wasn't done. And then I laid there and I was like, "But wait a second, you were so effective today. Like, you were so effective with your team. You were so effective on that coaching call. You were so effective in this other" met with some investors for another project we're looking at. And you need to stop thinking that your worth is tied to your productivity, that you now actually get to have a day where you were just effective because that's the next phase you're in. It's the new metric. So there's like some of these esoteric conversations I'm having with myself around I have these conditioned feedback loops of how I acquire my dopamine at the end of the day. And I'm really moving away from it's how many things I knocked off my to-do list and it's how effective I am at the things that I am supposed to get done. It's this idea of like, how do I be world class? No one cares if you're world class at clearing out your inbox, but how do I be world class on stage? How do I be world class at speaking to like young entrepreneurs or people that we're invested in, things like that. So I can see it just starting to naturally float out of me. It sometimes catches me by surprise, but it's a whole new level of awareness. It's like my brain is shifting. I'm pretty sure it is.
I love that distinction between being productive and effective. Like, just resonates so much. You Yeah, it does sound like you're going through like a whole shift. I'm the same thing. Like along those lines, like earlier you talked about some of the people you coach and even some of your former patients, like they didn't feel worthy of, let's say, making money or having the health and all that. How have you navigated that? I think for entrepreneurs, like most people think that we're probably just run and gun and shoot from the hip and invincible and we think we're great and blah, blah, blah. But we deal with a lot of self worth. I feel like that's been my biggest project working on that.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? What are some of the things that you learned or some of the practices that you've like incorporated or lessons you've earned even in your journey?
Yeah. I feel like I was told early on with being told a lesson and learning the lesson are, totally different things, but I was told early on, and it was normalized for me in conversations in my family that, like, the work you put into the world is not what determines your worth. You're gonna put some work into the world and it's gonna be amazing, and some work you're gonna put into the world and no one's gonna like it, and that doesn't actually change how you view yourself or your self-worth. Lo and behold, you move through a whole phase of your life where every time you put something into the world that people don't like, you're like, it's but what I had to fall back on was like, wait a second, someone told me a long time ago that this stuff isn't actually tied to my worth. Let me get curious about that piece. I that has been a huge lesson for me. I hang on to things way too long. I stay in things way too long. I say I'm going to do something. I'm not good at quitting stuff. That's a lesson. And this phase of life, Chip talks about this, that we're in a phase of life where we have to edit things. I need to get much better at being decisive around the things that I edit. for a really long time, I just accumulated things in my competency backpack. And just because I could do it, I kept piling the stuff on. And it might be because I was bad delegator, but I think a lot of it had to do with because it felt validating for me in terms of my own self-worth. When I grew up, I mentioned before my parents were divorced. I went to 7 different schools before I started grade 8, not because I was a problem child, but because they lived 4 hours away and had joint custody, and I just kept switching schools. And so I know one of my identities as I was leaving school, and one of the identities I had to conquer through experience was I just never felt smart enough. I always thought I was like not the smart kid in the room because I was always behind. It was like, oh, we covered that last year, but here's Megan. We need to bring her up to speed. So I was constantly needing to be brought up to speed. So I had this like core identity that I was not smart enough to do it. I feel like a huge part of the work that I've done, a huge part of the decisions that I made in the front half of my life were proving to myself that I could do it. I picked the if it was like, here's the easy route and that gets you to the end and you've earned the right to take the easy route, and here's the hard route. And the only difference is it's hard and they're going to the same place. Which one would you like? Every time I'm like, oh, I'll take the hard one. Thanks. So I really had something I had to prove. And it's really only now that I'm like, wait a second, let's do the easy route. Let's save the hard things for the things that need to be hard, and let's save some of the energy around the easy pieces.
I love that. What's one like practice that you just have developed that you just can't live without now? Is it a routine? Is it a mindset shift? Is there anything like that's helped you really walk this out?
Exercise and movement
Mm.
are like completely I come home with this state of surprise every time I work out, which is almost daily. And I'm like, the best thing I can do for my business is leave my desk and go to the gym. And everyone's like, you said that yesterday. I'm like, I know, but every day it surprises me that stepping away from the productivity and into a space where I can actually think, which is what I'm supposed to be doing now, is the most effective thing. I've really struggled with the internal identity of someone who gets up at 4 a.m. and has a morning routine and sticks to all of the things. I was like, I'm going to do that. And then I did that for 2 weeks. And I was like, I am exhausted. And my kid had me up last night and this is going on. And I was like, oh, I can't be that person. Like, not at this phase, not where I'm at. I have 3 young kids. And it's actually been giving myself permission to not have to do some of those things that has been really liberating and really freeing. Someone said the other day, they're like, "Oh, I journal once a week." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I could get behind that." Like I have a Saturday morning journal ritual, but not an everyday journal ritual. I'm actually fighting against some of the and moving away from some of I'm gonna call it dogma of routine and actually enabling myself to step to a bit of a state of flow. Like I can exist in a hyper disciplined state for long periods of time, and I'm actually not as much fun to be around. And I'm not as creative in my business and the work that I do. So I'm learning to balance the discipline with some free flowing time. But the thing that is non negotiable for me is exercise.
I love what you said about the dogma. The exercise piece too, that's been a game changer for me, but I had to hack the system. Like first of all, I hate working out in the morning. Mm. All right, let me just be honest. I hate working out.
Period. And
Period.
yeah,
I love the results. I love how
yeah.
I feel. I strolled out like a year and a half ago out of my apartment, saw a guy rented a studio in the retail space of our building, personal trainer, like small space. I walked in, I was like, I'd like to sign up because it's literally 50 steps out my door. Megan, I can't miss it. He knows where I live. Like I can't BS him.
Yeah.
And now I schedule the workouts in mid afternoon, like 1:30 or 2:30 p.m., which is what the exact time I'm not going to do anything at work anyway, unless I'm on a coaching call. And so I have no energy. I'm like, let me just go do it then. And man, I hate it every time. He kills me every time. And then I love it every time.
Mhm.
So that's made a huge difference. It's interesting. You mentioned art and it circled back for you, right? Or like maybe that was a mindset shift that you had. I'm going to make this my studio. I'm going to draw. I'm going to create as an entrepreneur. Art's kind of come back to me. You don't know this about me. I think not many people do. I won a ton of art awards when I was a kid.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, my mom went to the best art school in Korea and she's a painter and all that stuff. So I inherited a lot of talent from her. And I dropped art probably when I was like graduating high school because my expression then was like, I want to draw comic books. And she was super religious at the time. She's chilled out now. And she's like, no, you can't. That's the devil. And then I wasn't patient enough, so I went into music instead because it was a little bit more like free flowy and in the moment. But man, I just bought a bunch of sketchbooks and I just felt very led and called to I have all these freaking pencils. Those of you watching on YouTube will see all these
Oh,
pencils.
that's amazing.
And I just started art journaling. And this sort of ties back into the worth piece. I can see myself doing this at retreats, like when I become more of a monk. Like in my 50s, I'll wait, right, to that. But
In the
like,
monk phase, yeah.
yeah, in the monk phase, whatever phase that is that Chip talks about, the true elder phase. And I think one of the most powerful thing, I don't know why this happened. I was probably like on a gummy or something. And I was like, the ego had dissolved enough for me to flow. And I drew myself, and it was this sad looking man, just sad, hunched over, slouched over, looking like pouty. And that's really the self image I had. This is very recent. These are the journeys that I'm walking through. So you know what I did? I went and found a photo that my trainer took of me after we worked out, and I was like jacked, and I drew that, and it's helped me. I remember when you were prepping for your photo shoot, like you were taking a lot of photos and stuff like that, like documenting it. What was that like for you? Like just in your self image and in your, were you able to see yourself in a new way? Or who's that lady? Look at that girl.
Yeah,
She's like,
it was a pretty cool piece, and I don't wanna so for people who don't know, I decided last year at the start of I don't even know what year it is, start of 2023. I was like, I want to be in the best shape of my life, the best shape I've ever been in. And I reached out to a girlfriend who has a magazine. She's a trainer. She's got this whole training company. I was like, Jenny, I'm in. I want to do this. And I was like, I don't want your app. I don't want one of your trainers. I want to pay you because when I'm all in, I'm all in. And I don't want to weasel my way out of this. And I always worked out, but I was like, sometimes we go through the motions of working out every day, and sometimes we like work out every day. And I was like, I think I'm in doing through the motions. Anyway, I did this for a year. I had this disciplined diet for a year. I was like eating 150 grams of protein for a year. I was like lifting heavy stuff. I stopped doing cardio to the last month, and then I did cardio 8 times a day, it felt like. I was, like, training for a fitness photo shoot, and at the end of the day, I love the photos, and it enabled me to see myself in a different way, but it actually also reminded me that you have the discipline to achieve really amazing things, and that really amazing things often take time. And we
mm,
live in this era where there's just so much emphasis around immediate gratification. Like all the entrepreneurial coaches on Instagram are like, if you want to be reached yesterday, hire me. And I would like, I'm over it. I was never in it, but I'm like, I have a lot to say about it. And this evolution, I talked about this evolution a lot where I was like, if you want to do this for yourself, I just want you to know you can't do it by next week. Like it's going to take a lot of work that you don't want to do and blood, sweat, and tears that nobody sees to have this outcome. And I actually felt like it was this incredible analogy for what it's like to build a business or build success or have an incredible relationship, or like people see this little thing on the outside. But what it really reminded me of is it sounds so cliche, but what I'm actually made of. Because nobody saw that stuff. That wasn't fun Instagram content. No one wants to see that piece. But like you said, it's really hard and it kicks your ass. And you realize that you are slacking when you go to the gym 50% of the time, at least. So it was a good I often now categorize my workouts as, was this workout meant to improve your body or was this workout meant to improve your mental health? And both of them are valuable. But there's sometimes where I'm like, huh, what's going on? I'm like, oh, you've been on a mental health workout track for the last month. And maybe we need to be a little more strategic around the intention behind it.
I love that. I got one final question for you. You're obviously very busy. You got a lot of kids.
To
Greg.
kids.
Yeah. Three's a lot. I don't have any.
Three's a lot. But you
Yeah.
know what, Mike? Once you have one and you add a second one, and like by the third, it's just more mud. It's not like it's that much harder.
Uh,
It's just more mud
I'll
everywhere.
take your word for it. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that I want to experience it at especially at this point in my life. Another conversation for another time. But yeah, who knows what'll happen with me. But you're busy. You have a lot of things going on and you're an entrepreneur. Like how does support and encouragement work for you in your life? You got a lot of people, you got teams, you got clients, you got the family. Like, where do you get that from? Like, how do you guys, you and Greg, you and the family, you and your team, like, how, or just you in general, how does that look for you? Like, where do you get that from?
Like, where do I get my support from?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
encouragement.
So You've met Greg, right? Have you
Yeah.
met Greg? So Greg's
Strappingly handsome fellow.
yeah, he's Greg is lovely on all levels most of the time. He'd say the same. He'd throw the most of the time on the back end with me. He's incredibly supportive of my career and of our balancing of responsibilities in our family. He grew up in a family where his mom was like head of the pediatric oncology unit at the kids hospital in Toronto here. And so he saw this like working, so he didn't know anything else. And so we never had this conversation of, do you think maybe you don't want to travel so much? Do you think maybe, so he's amazing that way. And there's never a night where it's like, oh, Greg's got the kids tonight. Like, how did that go? It's Greg actually tells me what needs to go in their lunch bags on their way out to practice because they're into eating this kind of stuff right now. So we have it's really helpful to the work that I do in the world that I do not have partner who is anything but supportive of those pieces. You still have this mom guilt. I do feel guilty that he knows what cheese they like and I don't currently this week know what cheese they are eating. But I have to let some things go. So that's a huge practical help. I made a decision a few years ago after complaining in a mastermind, standing in line getting food at one of these things, and someone was like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Kids are driving me crazy." He's listen. I know I'm going to see you at this event next year, and I'm just going to say it. You need to hire a house manager to manage your whole life, like all the stuff that would happen if you were full time at home. You just hire someone else to do that, so that Greg doesn't have to do it, you don't have to do it, and you're not like this. I was like, "Oh, good call." And I saw Warren a year later and I was like, I hired the house manager and it's been a game changer. So that's huge. Like Mishka does our laundry. Mishka's like, Megan, we're out of soap and apples and toilet paper. And so I don't have to think about those things that take up bandwidth. And my family also doesn't have to go without essentials. And then in my own team, we're finally at a place where I can say with absolute definity, we have the dream team in place. And what's so amazing about that is I actually had to let go of I said this morning, I was like, I feel badly sometimes handing you guys work, and I'm working on that piece because you guys can't do your job when I'm hanging on to stuff because I have some unresolved emotional stuff. They are just so incredibly competent that one, they can call me out on that when I'm behaving that way. Just stuff magically happens behind the scenes that I don't have to be involved in. I don't know a lot of what happens in my business on a day to day basis, and that's how it should be. I have so much confidence in them as a team that I actually just don't know the answers to some fundamental, pieces, and I won't. I'll just refer you to the person who does. And so I think that if I had to revert to knowing all of those pieces, I couldn't be nearly as effective as I am in the world.
I love that. Man, thank you for sharing all of this. You're a wealth of wisdom. And again, I said this in the beginning. I just love you, your energy, your family, just the way that you guys do things, the way you show up in the world. It's an honor to call you my friend. Where shall we send everybody to get to know more of you? Instagram
Yeah.
is good.
Instagram's a great place. We've
Okay.
got the podcast that'll come back out in the
Yeah.
fall. We've got a bunch of stuff brewing, and I like to talk around about the process of that. How do we come up with ideas? What's in the works? Where are we going? So finding me, it's just at Dr. Meghan Walker on Instagram, and you can hang out for all the adventures.
Heck yeah. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Mike. Such a pleasure.